if you are having to be a different person at work than the person you think you really are, and you put on kind of different masks, you just are limiting your own potential, whether that's the employee or the customer, anyone, right? You're just more limited, and
Yes.
you bring out more of the person's potential, the more they can be themselves. And I think that's
Mm-hmm.
part of it. And then the more we see our peers as also human beings, the more we bring out their potential. And one of the things I think from the beginning we tried to operate as, and it wasn't even try, it was just sort of natural, was trying to be the same person that we are at work as we are at home, as much as possible, as much as we're comfortable. And also trying to think of that other person on the other side of the video conference or the table or the customer or the potential customer as a human being too. And one of the things we reflected on is a lot of the business world's lessons traditionally have been the way to be successful is to be less human. People say it's not personal, it's business, right? That's a very common phrase actually from the movie The Godfather. People talk about, leave your emotions at the door. People are your greatest assets, right? Using the term assets. And so we heard all that stuff that was was kind of dehumanizing. But we said, is there a way where you could actually win and still be what we call human first, remembering that you yourself are human, the customer is a human, whether they bought your software or not, the employee is a human, whether they're working for you or they just left your company, our competitors are human beings. And so our purpose statement that we wrote in this little box in 2017 was to be living proof you can win in business while being human first. I am the same person, I'm in my home office now, out there with our kids, with my wife, with my friends, with my brother, with my parents at work, with our customers. It's like there's one version of Nick.
I think the first thing that I've done with a lot of help from you individually and Mindmaven beyond you is to create a how I work document. And I think that was how I work was well understood by the initial, group of 11 that weren't me in those first 8 years, but then sort of documenting not just the culture and the values of the company, but me as an individual and how I work. I think it was a big piece of effort. We spent many weeks, many revisions and iterations writing that, but the ROI on that has been massive. It's paid off.
I'm going to ask you for examples around the ROI, but what I want to do for the benefit of our listeners here is just give a little bit of a background of what a how I work document is, because I think that's really powerful. And I'm really happy you brought it up because it's actually something that is so small and so overlooked often, yet very powerful. And I hope you'll have some stories to share. But the how I work document is a very simple concept. It's the idea of you writing a user manual about yourself. It can come in very various forms and formats. I know that you and I worked on a very long one that actually could be considered a book, the book of Noah, that goes into very specifics, but you can also go and make it a 2 or 3 page bullet point list, mostly as a conversation guide rather than a self-informing type of document. But it basically has elements in it of for example, your values, of things you expect from people working with you, what people can expect from you. It has even elements of vulnerability in it, like how can you help me improve? Where do I feel like I am still not the leader I want to be, et cetera, right? And the power of that document is, in our views, and we've seen this happen quite a few times, is that when you have it in place, you can basically shortcut the process that it takes for somebody you've hired to learn how to best operate with you. You are basically cutting out all that trial and error where basically there are certain elements of culture that are different or approaches. One element that we put into a how I work documents are pet peeves. For example, mine is the word should. I hate it when people write we should do. It just is something that sets me off, and so it gives elements of that one. And so yes, you and I worked on it. And why are you saying it paid off in terms of ROI?
So, since writing it, I have distributed it to all of my direct reports, and some of them are brand new to the relationship. We've hired people who've become direct reports since writing that document, and it's like a shorthand for like, here's how I work, literally. Here's how I think. Here's what's important to me. here's how I'm going to approach big decisions that we have. Here's how I think about things that are important and things that are urgent, and the fact that those aren't the same thing, and how I draw the distinction between the two. It's enabled people to, when they have an idea and they're trying to persuade me of something, put it into a form that resonates with me, where I understand the kind of decision that they're looking for me to make, whether it's a one-time decision, one-way door type 1 decision, or much more often a two-way door. And it's something that we're going to do and think about it as something we can easily reverse if we need to, and can therefore make a much faster decision and have a very different bar of how much information do we need, how much data do we need, how certain do we need to be if it's a type 1 versus a type 2. Like that's an example of something that I've picked up along the way. That's a Jeff Bezos Amazon thing that I've sort of inherited in studying that company and some of the successful leadership frames that they use. But it's something that if you didn't know that about me, you wouldn't be able to make an argument and just use the phrase of, I think this is a type 2 decision. Here's why. And so here's what I'm thinking about it. And then give me the rationale that convinces me that, yeah, we should move forward with that. And we can always reverse course if we decide this is not the right thing down the line.
Everybody asks the question, where do you see yourself being in 5 years? Instead of that kind of generic question, can we think about, listen, this is what I'm good at today, and this is what I want to be good at tomorrow. And is there a way for us to make that part of my job so I can feel like I'm growing at the same time I'm doing my job? And I think this is the great failure of most companies, is they use performance reviews to devolve people into numbers. Can we elevate people above that and say, listen, just like the organization is asking things of you, you can ask things of the organization. You can say, these are the ways I want to grow. And the organization in return can ask you about ways that it needs you to grow. And if we create a conversation, all of a sudden, hey, you know what? Who has conversations? People have conversations. And you're not a number anymore. You're not just an algorithm. All of a sudden, you're a person in a conversation with the organization, and they're going to see you in a way that was difficult to see you when you were a number.
And I think the powerful thing about that is that people then, of course, feel more like humans, but more important than that is that they will feel within the organization, within that team, understood. Right? Exactly. They feel like people understand them. People, listened. And when you listen, you basically give one of the ultimate gifts that a human can give to another human, that is feeling like they're being heard. And so I think that is definitely a very powerful way to go about it.
There's a context in which you are interacting with these people. So for me, it's a company, right? We have a company. I'm the leader of the company. We're trying to achieve a business outcome. We're trying to build something, build some software, sell some software, those kinds of things. But I think there's a recognition and a humility about the fact that the humans themselves and their journey through life and your relationship with them is bigger and more important than that. The humans and their journey through life is more important than your business outcomes. And so just bringing that humility to every interaction, understand. So, when you get up in front of the company to announce some news, good news about a quarter, bad news about a layoff, whatever, they're going to take that back and integrate it into a life context. They might be raising a family. They might be supporting their parents in another country. They might be trying to get a visa for somebody, right? And this news is getting integrated into a context for them that is it's not about you and your company and getting to the end of the quarter. It's about, how does this help or hurt them in what they're doing with their family, right? What they're doing with their life. That's the real story. Your little thing at your business is not the real story. And so having some, not that you should, it takes quite a bit of perseverance and competitiveness and drive and all these things to achieve business goals. And that is important. But to the person who is receiving the message from you, it is less important than, I came here on an H-1B and I'm trying to bring over my fam, or I'm trying to send money back for my family, or I'm trying to afford a house that's big enough to raise my kids in, like that. That's the thing. Your business is not the be all end all. I try to remember that when I'm having these interactions.
What we want to make sure is, by interrogating our own biases and replacing them with data, can we build highly performant hiring processes that actually get candidates through the funnel much faster, get more qualified candidates. And because they're highly performant, they actually, one dimension of high performance is, are you ending up with better representation in that talent pipeline?
Yeah, okay. And I would argue that it has a very profound long tail behind it, because if you end up hiring the right person, and that person is really thrilled about this role because it is a really good fit, that person, onboards faster, becomes faster, and probably develops a much longer lasting sense of loyalty, or like it has a inverse impact on attrition in that sense.
That's exactly right.